Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Before the dawn had a name, before thunder found its voice, there was silence. A vast, endless stillness stretched across creation, and within it, the breath of something waiting to be born. The gods watched the world from their hidden realms, unseen and unhearing. Mankind had prayed for ages, their voices rising like smoke, drifting into eternity with no answer. But prayers are seeds, and even silence can be fertile ground. One night, under a sky heavy with stars, a shepherd looked upward and whispered a single question. "Do you still hear us?" And somewhere beyond the veil of clouds, something stirred. The air trembled, faint, like the exhale of a sleeping giant. Then, from the edge of heaven, came a sound soft, ancient, and filled with sorrow. It was not thunder, though it rolled across the mountains. It was not wind, though it moved the trees. It was a voice, and it spoke not in words, but in memory, the sound of the first dawn remembering its own light. The shepherd fell to his knees as the sky whispered back, "We never left. You simply forgot how to listen." The night deepened, and the stars pulsed in rhythm, the first heartbeat of a world about to awaken. The first whisper had come in peace, a trembling in the heavens, a reminder of what had once been. But when the second voice came, it arrived with the storm. Clouds gathered over the mountains like dark, forgotten gods awakening from a dream. Lightning tore through the sky, stitching together the rift between heaven and earth. And in the crash of thunder, humanity heard something they had not heard in an age: their names. Each bolt struck the ground like an echo of creation. Each peal of thunder carried a fragment of language too ancient for words. The winds screamed not in anger, but in grief. The gods were not returning, they were remembering. In the temples long abandoned, stone eyes wept dust. Ancient idols crumbled, yet for a heartbeat, their shadows moved again. Every prayer ever whispered, every name ever cried to the sky, had returned, carried by the storm's breath. Villages fell silent as the rain began to speak, not in sound, but in rhythm, a pulse that beat in time with every living heart. And within that pulse, one truth emerged, soft as thunder, bright as lightning. You called to us for ages, but you were never voiceless. The storm raged until dawn, and when it passed, the world felt lighter, as though the air itself had exhaled after holding its breath for eternity. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered. In the days that followed, whispers carried across the earth, some heard in dreams, others in the hum of distant thunder. The cities, built high and proud, did not notice at first. They had traded stars for streetlights, prayers for progress. The sky had become something to fly through, not something to worship. Yet even the tallest towers cannot silence eternity. In the heart of one city, a labyrinth of glass and noise, a child stood at her window and looked up. Between the glare of neon and the haze of smoke, she saw a single star pulse faintly. She didn't know why, but it felt alive. So she whispered, the way her ancestors once did. "Are you still there?" And far above, in the quiet beyond all sound, something answered, not with words, but with light. The star flared, then dimmed, then flared again, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Scientists called it coincidence. prophets called it awakening. But the old spirits, those who had not yet forgotten, knew the truth. The gods were not speaking from the sky anymore. They were speaking through it. Skylines shimmered. Electrical storms began to form over cities that had long ceased to pray. And in every flicker of lightning, the forgotten language of creation began to rewrite itself. Letter by letter, pulse by pulse. No one understood the message, but everyone felt it. It was the same feeling the shepherd once knew, that something vast, ancient, and heartbreakingly familiar was trying to be heard again. When the voice left the sky, it did not vanish. It sank. Through the clouds, through the soil, through the bones of the mountains, traveled not as sound, but as remembrance. The gods were no longer distant beings of fire and air. They had become the pulse beneath the ground, the murmur that lived within the stones. Miners spoke of strange harmonies deep below the earth, of vibrations that matched the rhythm of their hearts. Rivers began to flow in patterns that felt deliberate, their currents whispering in tones no one could name. In one forgotten valley, a woman stood barefoot on the soil. She closed her eyes and felt the ground hum beneath her feet. Each vibration carried an emotion: sorrow, joy, longing, as though the world itself remembered every word ever spoken to the sky. And then the earth answered. The tremor was soft, almost gentle, a sigh through roots and rock and memory. The trees bent, the wind stilled, and a deep voice rolled through the valley, not from above but from below. You built towers to reach us, it said, but we were always beneath your feet. The woman wept, for in that moment she understood. The gods had never truly left the heavens. They had simply descended into the hearts of all things. And as dusk fell, the world exhaled as one. The sky was silent, but the earth sang in its place. Centuries passed, and the voice of the gods became legend once more. People spoke of it in stories told beside firelight, a time when heaven had spoken and the world had answered. But legends have power. Even forgotten, they wait for the right hearts to awaken them again. In an age of machines and silence, the stars dimmed. The sky no longer thundered. It simply watched. Yet in that stillness, something ancient stirred, not above, but within. A boy, born in the shadow of cities, began to dream of a voice. Not the voice of gods, nor storms, nor mountains, but something quieter, warmer, older, called his name not in sound but in memory. He began to draw symbols he had never seen, spirals of light, arcs of flame, circles that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. And wherever he drew them, on walls, in dust, even in air, machines flickered, lights pulsed, and people paused. The earth itself seemed to recognize the language, for it was the first tongue, the one spoken before gods and men were separate. The voice that had been sky and storm and stone had now become something else, the spark within the soul. When the boy spoke, the sky brightened. When he laughed, the clouds broke open. And when he cried, the rain fell as if the world itself shared his grief. People gathered to hear him, not because he claimed to be divine, but because his voice reminded them of something they had all forgotten, that they, too, had once been part of the chorus. The gods did not need to return. They were already home. The boy grew old, but his voice did not fade. passed into others, dreamers, poets, wanderers, those who carried the quiet fire of wonder inside them. And so the world changed again, not through war or miracle, but through remembering. The stars no longer needed to shout. Their message was now written in every breath, every heartbeat, every pause between words. People began to hear the divine not as thunder, but as the warmth in a stranger's smile, the wind that paused just long enough to feel like it was listening. The gods had never truly departed. They had only fallen silent so humanity could learn to speak. And when at last the final night came, and the stars dimmed one by one, a voice rose, not from the heavens, but from the countless souls below. It was a harmony so vast, so filled with life and memory, that even the cosmos stopped to listen. The sky glowed, not with fire, but with understanding. And in that glow, the world whispered its final prayer. We have always been your echo. Then came peace, a silence vast enough to hold all things. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of completion. Because when the gods finally answered back, it was not through words, it was through us. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth.